What's up, everyone? Today's conversation, we're talking about financial literacy with Tanya Van Court, the founder and CEO of Goalsetter. And we're going to hear everything about her aha moments in terms of financial literacy, things that she's doing with Goalsetter, and how we can all go about learning how to be financially free. You're a mom, and the idea behind Goalsetter I read started from your daughter, Gabrielle. Can you tell me about kind of how this all came to be?
Well, the inception of that story goes back a little bit further than what most people read, Harrison. I actually, when I was in my late 20s, I had 2 degrees from Stanford University in engineering. And so people generally thought I was pretty smart. I was working at a company in Silicon Valley, making good money, doing interesting things. That company gave me a lot of stock. And so by the time I was in my late 20s, I had about $1 million in stock and stock options. But I didn't know anything about diversification or asset allocation or stock or options. I couldn't have told you more than one sentence about any of those. And so I didn't sell the stock. When the stock vested, I left the stock in the company. I thought, wow, it's going up. I guess it will continue to go up. And then in 2001, the big tech bubble burst and it proved me wrong. That stock did not continue to go up. In fact, I lost almost all of it, almost all of that $1 million in a matter of a few hours. And I was like staring at my screen like, wait a minute, how do I undo?
Yep.
And it didn't work. I kept pressing Control Y, didn't work. And so I vowed in that moment to never let something like that happen to my own kids. I said, I can't turn back the hands of time, but I just can't let this happen to my own kids. But that was a big awakening for me of, it doesn't matter how good you are at your day job. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. If you have not learned about financial literacy, you just don't know. And those things will happen to you too. So I taught my daughter everything I knew. And I learned a lot more than I had known. And by the time she was 8, she said, Mommy, for my 9th birthday, I really only want 2 things. And I said, what's that? And she said, enough money to save for an investment account and a bike.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's when I thought, Harrison, if I can get every kid to say that, I can change the world.
Wow. I mean, I definitely would have said the bike. I would not have said an investment account at that age. So that's definitely a credit to you. What are the benefits of a Goalsetter card versus getting a regular debit card or cash?
Wow. I'm so glad you asked me that question because, the part that drives me in this FinTech space is that we are doing things so differently than the rest of the market is. I was in a room with 50 kids once, and these 50 kids were some of the most underprivileged kids in the country. And I asked them how many of them had Cash App. And these kids were like 17 years old. You're not even supposed to have Cash App if you're younger than 18. And literally 48 of the kids raised their hands. And I almost wanted to cry because what I realized in that moment is those kids were learning very early how to send money and how to spend money. And the last I checked, because I have 4 kids, kids don't need to learn how to send money and spend money. They're good at that from birth. What they need to learn is how to save, how to invest. They need to learn about financial language. And I saw that all that America had taught our kids and all that existing companies were teaching our kids was, here's a debit card, go spend it. And maybe the piece of education that they got along with that was, you're going to run out of money at some point, but that's not enough. That's not enough education in terms of, how do I invest? What does investing even mean? How should I save? What do I save for? What is the difference between saving and investing? What's compound interest? What's the rule of 72? What's the stock market? I mean, all of those things are questions that, interestingly enough, kids actually have. Kids are thirsting for answers to those questions. But we as a country don't teach them. And none of the existing financial technology companies in the market were teaching them. So what do we do different? We teach kids about financial literacy and financial language. We have a set of quizzes that are kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. They are mapped to national financial literacy standards. So kids are learning real things. In kindergarten, they're learning needs versus wants. In 11th grade, they're learning APY versus APR, but they're doing it all through the lens of pop culture. So they're doing it through, the lens of hip hop artists and social media influencers and YouTube personalities. When Beyonce says, "Can you pay my bills? Can you pay my telephone bills?" We use that to explain Beyonce wouldn't need anyone to pay her bills if she would just save for an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of her expenses. She can pay for her own bills. We use a lyric from Chance the Rapper that says, "I hate inflation, hate the store, I hate to choose, I hate the war." Why does Chance hate inflation? A, because inflation makes you gain weight. B, because inflation leads to war. C, because inflation is when prices increase, so your dollar's worth less. What's the answer, Harrison? A, B, or C? Let's see if you get this one right. It's C.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. Honestly, I was you were answering so many of my different questions that I had for you. I was like going through like, man, is there anything left to ask her?
No, I'm sorry. I was talking too much.
No, it's good. It's good. Keep going.
So, look, we have these amazing financial literacy quizzes, but then we attach them to our debit card. So we have a fun rule called learn before you burn. A parent can activate this rule for their kid's card, and on Sunday morning, their kid's card will automatically freeze if they haven't taken their financial literacy quiz for the week yet. And the minute they take that quiz, their card will unfreeze again. So that's what makes us different. We really believe in, what my grandmother said a long time ago, which was you have to do what you need to do before you can do what you want to do. And our kids need to learn about investing, learn about saving before they learn about swiping a debit card.
No, I think that's so powerful. And, I've said this a number of times before, but I didn't start having financial literacy conversations until I was about to be drafted and after I was drafted. So, for these kids to have fun ways to learn, I think is very important. If there was one thing that you could teach every, Black kid in America that you would say, okay, if they had this concept around money, or they knew this about saving or spending or whatever it may be, I would feel more comfortable at night knowing that these kids would be on the right direction, on the right path moving forward.
I try to talk to kids in aha moments because I think that, kids are so used to short snippets of information through being on Instagram now that they only really relate to short snippets of information. So if I can give them an aha moment or two and get them to really digest those are the things that will change their lives. So I'll give you just a couple of the aha moments that I share with kids that I think are really powerful and profound. And I've seen the difference that it makes in their interest around saving and investing. The first one, I was actually talking to students at Morehouse College, the freshmen at Morehouse College. And I said, okay, I want you to look to the brother on the left and look to the brother on the right. Both of them have $100,000 in their backpack. Don't tell anybody. The one on the left of you is going to put that $100,000 into a savings account at today's interest rates. The one on the right of you is going to put that $100,000 into a mutual fund and invest in the stock market. Do you know what a mutual fund is? And so I explain what a mutual fund is, that it's a conglomeration of stocks that kind of represents the overall market. So the one on the right of you, he's not super smart about investing. He doesn't know which stocks to pick. He's just picking a broad array of the market. So he's putting it in a mutual fund, the guy on the left putting it in a savings account. How much does the guy on the left have at the end of 30 years? In a savings account at 1% interest, that guy on the left has $106,000 at the end of 30 years. The guy on the right has $761,000 at the end of 30 years. I literally had these young men, Harrison, like rushing up to the stage and saying, "Miss Tanya, you have changed my life." And so it was, so that is one piece of information I would want them to know. And I'll give you a second aha moment that I often share when I'm talking to kids. The second one is in 1980, you could have bought a pair of Nike shoes for $35. Or you could have spent that $35 on Nike stock, it was the first year that Nike went public, and that Nike stock cost 18 cents per share. Which one do you think would have been the smarter move? Well, fast forward 40 years. If you bought that pair of Nike shoes for $30, your Nike shoes would be worth nothing today because nobody wants your old stinky shoes. If you bought if you bought $30 in Nike stock, that Nike stock would be worth $1.82 million today. And it's so important that kids start to understand. I literally tell them, when you see the Nike swoosh, what do you think of? And they say sneakers. And I say, that's great. But now I want you to think of the Nike ticker symbol. I want you to think of Nike headquarters. I want you to think of Nike as a business and how you can participate in owning a part of that business. And it really resonates.
I think that is huge. I mean, learning about index funds and how money grows and things like that, it's a hard concept to wrap your mind around, just because, I wasn't really familiar with the stock market or things like that growing up. So to be able to understand, like, oh, okay, instead of, me getting a bike, if I took that money for the bike and put it into a stock, and then, 15 years from now, I wonder how many bikes I could buy with that, as opposed to, that bike having a flat tire and being in my garage that I never use anymore.
Right, because you spend all your money on that bike and you don't have any money to get the new tire.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Last two questions for you. What is one misconception you think Black kids or Black people in general have about money?
I think one misconception that Black kids and Black people in general have about money is that if you don't have that much, or if you've been in a family that has lived check to check, you often think that money is something for other folks. You think that you will never be able to attain wealth if you don't start with, if not a silver spoon in your mouth, at least like a copper spoon, right? If you don't start with that you will never be able to attain real wealth. And, that's why I really like to break down for kids creating wealth. There is a blueprint for it. It's not that complicated. I mean, there are ways to do it. There are paths to do it, and it's replicable, right? I mean, I would imagine it's like, shooting a 3-point shot. There's a way that you do it. And if you, get the pattern down over and over and over again, your percentage of free throws is going to go up. And it's the same with building wealth. Like, if you do what you're supposed to do, then you will be able to build wealth. And so I think that's one of the major misconceptions. Like, I share with kids all the time, and quite frankly, with parents too. If you just invest $30 a day over a period of 30 years, you'll be a millionaire. So, kids are like, oh, I can't be a millionaire. Yes, you can, with $30 a day, right? Yep. And so if you get a job and you say, okay, well, I'm going to figure out a way to squeeze out $30 a day, I too can be a millionaire, right? If you, are going to buy your first home and you don't go and try to buy, that big 1-family home, and instead buy a 2-family home, within 10 years, your mortgage could be paid for you by someone else, as mine is. I live in Brooklyn in a brownstone, right? Your mortgage could be paid for you by someone else, and then you can invest your entire paycheck, essentially, right? Mm. So I just think there are these standard things that if we teach kids, hey, wait, you bought a single family house? Why would you ever do that? Come on now, right? If that becomes the norm of our conversation instead of the exception of our conversation, then we're essentially training the next generation to be financially free with 10 pieces of information that they just don't have today.
No, I think that is powerful. Lastly, in 5 years from now, where do you want to see Goalsetter?
Oh, Harrison, I want to see Goalsetter as ubiquitous as Cash App and Venmo and PayPal. I want to see Goalsetter in every family in America. I want to see it in every school in America. I want to see corporations saying, this is how we are going to transform the community in our backyard. If we want to continue to employ people in Portland, Oregon, in Denver, Colorado, in Chicago, in Detroit, in Atlanta, then we are going to need to raise a financially literate and financially capable community. And so we're going to invest in our communities and make sure that each one of the kids in our backyard has a Goalsetter account, that each one of the kids is learning financial education and financial literacy, and they're learning how to save and how to invest. We can transform this country if we teach kids these skills. And there has never been a time like this in America. The truth of the matter is, we've never presented young Black and brown kids financial literacy and financial education created by a woman of color. When have we ever done that in the past 100 years? We haven't. And so now we have an opportunity to meet kids where they are with content that engages them and excites them, from a woman who has worked at Nickelodeon and at Discovery Education and lived in Oakland and lived in Chicago and lives in Bed-Stuy. This is a new paradigm for our children. And so I think that we have an opportunity to reverse the course of where our children are headed and where the statistics say they're headed, and literally put this whole generation of Black and brown kids on a path to financial freedom and wealth. And so that's what I want to see. I want to see them not having tools on their phone and in their pocket that teach them all about sending and spending money. I want to see them financially empowered and knowledgeable and ready to become that next generation of millionaires and billionaires.
No, I think that is so powerful. And, I'm definitely looking forward to continuing to support Goalsetter. Tanya, thank you so much for the time today. I know I learned some things, even though it was a lot. I almost missed the question. And I hope everyone watching this, learned something too.
Harrison, thank you for having this conversation with me. Thank you for your support. I can't tell you how much it means. It truly does. And I'm just very grateful. I mean, look, we know that movements since the beginning of time have been launched and led by Black athletes all across our country, right? And you have been an amazing part of this movement. And so I just wanted to tell you how grateful I am that you've been on Team Goalsetter, and I can't wait to see what we can do together next.
Absolutely. Thank you for the time today, Tanya.